Hi, I am back with another video. If you're here, you probably will see right below I just recorded a video reading. Again, the name got a little bit butchered. It was spelled in two different ways. Mr. Braun is either Jedediah or Jedaliah. It's a video I just did reading an article about that kind of just broached into the IQ question, human biodiversity, a little bit of that kind of nature. You should check that out. I didn't see the timestamp or how that ended up squaring away. I think it's a pretty reasonable length video. There's some other great things here you should check out. Like, share, and subscribe, all that sweet business. So what I'm gonna do is tonight, interestingly enough, this is a video I think I wanted to do for a while. I have probably found this podcast that we're going to look at is about a year old. And so, yes, my title is a little bit antagonistic, clickbaity, but that's what you got to do out here in these YouTube streets sometimes. I mean, there's a little bit of truth to it, but So this is a podcast or just like a hangout. I don't have everyone's name, and I they all kind of give a blurb in the middle. The link is in the description. I think it's interesting to watch. The first hour is all of them combined, and then the one guy leaves. So the basic premise here is there are three more self-identified alt-writers. Guess who? In the pictures as you can see in the thumbnails, and then two Hotepers or self-proclaimed Hotepers. Um, this guy, he says he does a reactionary report on TRS, or which is short for the right stuff. Big blog, sets of podcasts. If you're familiar with it, with Daily Showa or I think Daily Show and Fashion Nation are probably the two big heavy hitters to come out of the right stuff.biz. He said he's one of the hosts of the Reactionary Report, which is also pretty well known too. I didn't really, and she's the one who upload the videos. This is from the Continental Conscious video, channel. And most of them are just kind of like talking and hanging. So I just wanted to skip the kind of introductions that they kind of do for the most part and just kind of start to move in. So this is probably part one. There's another podcast of one other identified Hotep on Twitter, if he's still there. His name is Adonis Hotep. And then there's another video which will tie into an article that was posted on the Occidental Descent, which is like a Southern white nationalist site, kind of pretty much run and organized. Like the main person who's kind of the face of that site is Hunter Wallace, and he writes an article about Hotep Alt-Right Alliance. And then the guy here on the farthest end is known as Hotep Jesus. I'll just get this out of the way first because I want to make because this is gonna be biased a bit, and there's a little bit of some annoyance that I have. There's a video of his that he made where he's like, I'll have to just probably show it. I didn't even want to pull it up and do that, but I'm not gonna show it now. I'll be able to kind of give you some insights as to like kind of some of my annoyance with him. You can tell from the title that I already kind of have an angle here that I'm leaning towards. So I think it'll just be easier to like uncover as you move through it and for me to come back with a conclusion at the end. So basically, this all kind of starts out where basically they're all kind of on Twitter, and there's this moment about a year ago, right? Probably once the Trump train really started picking up steam, and the alt-right was pretty much all over Twitter, and they're just all over the place. And then this thing happens where like some of these Hoteps and type people, funnily enough, I can only really identify these two black men here, and then Uncle Mayhem, who has a channel. Speaking of another bias, because I want to cover a video he did in an article that's on Hotep Nation about the same subject. He was on Jim Goat's podcast, and I remember I said a few things about Hotep because it started coming up briefly for this like week or two where the alt-right was tweeting them and they were tweeting each other. And I remember just being like, well, wait a second. This is just warmed over like red, black, and green, pro-black, Negro goofiness. Like I have a cousin who's now in her early 40s or 50s. And I remember they started going vegan. They were talking about, back to, not let's say back to Africa, because they're going to say in a minute that they're not even into this stuff. Basically, the key, I guess, let me just boils down to one point about doing this video. And you can retake what I'm saying from the title. There still exists in the alt-right dissident right today, this kind of idea, and it serves a couple purposes. Like, okay, well, there's got to be blacks out there who want their own nations too, and who want to be separated and left alone. And sadly, it's not when the alt-right does this, it's not even that much of a departure from the conservatism they claim to hate so much. So I remember thinking, just maybe after the Trump election, and especially when this started happening, I started to get the kind of beginnings of this thought. I saw some really well-natured whites, conservatives, Republican types who just, are very much solidly right wing, nothing special, nothing particular, get completely reamed by a lot of self-identified alt-righters. And, as far as I was in those Twitter streets during that time too, participating in a few like troll raids, like on National Review Online and stuff like that. I've seen some really well-meaning white people who are part of their white race that they want to preserve and build an ethno state for get completely chewed out and out. White people who probably, with a little more care and concern, could have been brought further over, at the very least, to just say, hey, I'm not even going to actively oppose you. Because that's one thing I think the alt-right and a lot of this white identity, white nationalism needs to understand. There's going to be a lot of white people who just don't think like you, don't agree with you. And the one thing that you can at least aim for is getting them not to be actively all in your face and not to have them virtue signaling against you. If you can at least start there, I think that's, especially now, it's funny me doing this video now, a year later, but I was just thinking a second ago before I turned the camera on. I was like, well, the things that I've had to, the circles and things I've had to run into and go through with Black women, and the kind of, I will almost say in a strange way, our kind of version of an emerging neo-reactionary alt-right amongst ourselves and redefining ourselves as Black women today in light of a slew of things, framing ourselves in the current context and about history. It was just, I kind of went on a little tangent there. I apologize. I'm just plugging my phone in. But so they do this thing where, like, oh, we want to talk to people like these Hoteps, like you're going to see here in some clips of this podcast. And you're going to see, I'm going to play it first, and maybe I'll just play this real quick and just set this up. So they introduce themselves. It was some Twitter back and forth. Hey, come on to a live stream and let's chat. And it unfolds to the first few minutes. You'll see exactly what I'm saying, that you don't really understand each other. And particularly the alt-right, white identity types, I'll probably abbreviate this in some form. So I'm going to kind of move between saying alternative right, alt-right, white nationalists, pro-white, white identitarian, and I'll try to collapse it into like just saying alt-right probably most of the time because that's the title to which this refers. But just keep in mind, those different movements and descriptions do have their own kind of subsets and things that make one thing not the other and vice versa. So anyway, so there's this fundamental misunderstanding, and I particularly would locate this, and like, I don't want to attack these young, lovely white children, because I have to say this, because these kids are young, and that's a whole nother topic in itself of how young a lot more the alt-right is compared to like white nationalism 1.0 and even normie conservative movement. And these kids all appear to be in their early to mid 20s, if not a little bit older. I'm in my very, very early 30s. So there's a sympathy there, and I don't want to say I'm just attacking them for just being in their 20s and just figuring stuff out. But what I've noticed, and that observation I've made about a lot of this, the alt-right, as it's been known as this current incarnation, for me in particular, when folks like me were just checking into the dark enlightenment and neo-reactionaryism, and the term alternative right was out there, particularly with Richard Spencer earlier on, when he was just more kind of critiquing normie mainstream conservatism or normie conservatism, and kind of gave me a very valuable framework to work within and to really question even myself at the time when I started just kind of delving into these circles, these weird things I was holding on to and absorbing from mainstream conservatism that I always found were silly, but he kind of gave me a way to really phrase those things. So I just think there's a lot of these. So now this newer incarnation that is kind of indicative of the Trump election, these are younger whites. And I noticed this a lot with most of these kids. They're very young or younger. And I get a very middle class, Like, these are kids who, if you think about the idea of, not saying that they were part of this, but white flight, these are the generations of young whites who they really don't know any black people, or they know them due to the diversity through the media, through the music. They might have had a few black kids through school. I'm just trying to like give some examples, but basically what I'm trying to hit is they have this idea of a lot of things about black people, and particularly black men, because we know that usually black people is code word for black men, and whatever is ailing them or what pleases them at any given moment. Black women and children are pretty much an afterthought, if anything at all. And they've heard all the yelling, the Black Lives Mattering, and all the like angst, and just all this megaphone of black issues and black people saying they want certain things, and they want white folks to go away, they want to be over here, they want their own stuff, they want more gives me that, whatever. But when you actually get into a real lived in experience of what is actually going on, things that black women like myself and many in this kind of YouTube sphere and some of the other places where it breaks out online, the things that we're talking about as black women, and these realizations, like I said, that kind of make us our own version of a comparable sense of the alt-right, which is in most sects, certain white men, particularly identifying and realizing themselves in their context within history as white men. I'm seeing something very similar, just in terms of it's a X race plus with Y blank gender, realizing things that they hadn't realized, revisiting history, emerging to move through this current period of time into some future to becoming who they are. I do have to pay Richard Spencer if I say that. Become who you are. It's probably trademarked by MPI. But anyway, so we're here at the beginning. They've done their kind of little intros, the first minute and a half. And so I guess the question that that Hotep Jesus had is, oh, well, what is the alt-right? What's the alt-right? Da, 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 da. So we'll just start there, and we'll just go for a little bit, and I'll stop when I deem it necessary to kind of give you the kind of lay of the land here.
What exactly the alt-right is, and then I think you referenced like Gavin McInnes and Cernovich, and just people like that, like in thinking that they are possibly alt-right. So I just kind of like wanted to go into like, what are your questions differentiating the alt-right from the alt-right?
I don't even think the people that claim to be alt-right or alt-right know which sect they belong to, because I've seen so many mixed responses that I'm now confused. There's alt-right, there's alt-right, there's new right. What else?
Reactionary, neo-reactionary. There's a
lot
lot of shit. I'll give you that on spectrum.
Okay, I'll jump in here to begin with, and then Prince, you take it from here. The alt-right is kind of all-encompassing. You've got white nationalists like myself. You have neo-reactionaries like hubris. There's monarchists. There's Nazis. Nazis. I'm using that, but some of them self-identify as Nazis. National socialists in the modern sense. I'm sure I'm missing quite a few. You've got a lot of Catholics, a lot of pagans. You have all of these people that pretty much abide by, at the end of the day, by the 14 words of David Lane. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. That is more or less what the alt-right is. The alt-right, you get your Gavin McInnes, you get your Milo Yiannopoulos, these people that we must secure the existence of Western children.
Yeah, right. Like civic nationalism, basically.
Yeah.
Exactly. Civic nationalists versus we are, I would imagine all of us, ethno-nationalists. And I forgot identitarians in that big group of things. But I'm an ethno-nationalist. I want my people to be separated from other people so that we can prosper. And I get the impression that's what the Hoteps want, is to be in charge of your own destiny and have your own agency.
We'll just pause right there before we get the answer. I mean, you already know what the answer is. You know what this black man, this other black man are going to say. So, but we'll just pause there. I'll let the suspense build. We know what's coming here. So basically, and this is kind of the tell that I was kind of setting up here in the folly in the title of this. This is just, I'm gonna get people maybe show up here. I haven't seen any other videos, and I'm gonna try to keep the language a little more PG because I want to make points that don't get lost and get lost in the swear words or certain words that start with certain letters. Well, so I'm gonna be conscientious of that. So he gave us great, layout of what the alt-right is and what kind of different factions that make that kind of comprise, especially at that time. I was just riffing before thinking about this. There's been the same kind of things that happen in the Black women's spheres, the CK, SSL, Kendall, Simone, the whole Isadora Storm, all that stuff that was happening in the Black women's circles online, and our kind of like, I guess if we're not we're the alternative Black woman. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of some way to kind of make this comparable in the sense of these types of like online identity movements, because we have an identity movement of our own in a sense of this re-identifying as Black and women, and that some is comparable to what was going on over here. So it's interesting. I'm actually grateful to be doing this a year later after being in this kind of Black woman's alternative spaces that I tend to run around in and observe and participate in. And so these different factions are still there even today, because this was a year ago. I think this was right after Trump got elected. It was right before, I think. And so he just gives this great layout, because you notice how he was playing like, oh, I don't even know which is the alt-right or the alt-right. Now he's later on the end, he is kind of being partially serious, but that begs the question, like, a lot of these things are just pretty easy to kind of figure out online by asking a few people. Like, if you're genuinely serious about knowing who was who and what was what, you could have just have like asked. You'll see kind of where I'm getting at, especially with Uncle Jesus Hotep, or okay, he's Uncle G. God damn it. There's Handy Mayhem, Flex, Adonis Hotep, and then Hotep Jesus, HJ Hotep Jesus. I'll make a note here just so I don't keep stepping over that. So did you catch the question? Well, I mean, especially any of the Black women that may just come over here from to this channel, from seeing me in certain places, please chime in the comment section. Do you know that the Black man wants to like be separated from like this multiculti, i.e. majority white society with white men and white women, and be leading his families and his children and his sisters and brothers into like their own self-sufficient place of being? I mean, you know what the answer is going to be. Let's keep continuing, because that's just on the tip of his tongue, right? We know this in all of our varied experiences so far. Let's find out.
What am I missing here, Hubris? Because you're the guy who fills in all the fucking blanks. Because I'm just a basic bitch white nationalist.
I think that trying to make
basic bitch white nationalist
Hotep a mirror of alt-right is probably not true. I cannot say that we in fact want separation in our own ethno-stick, and we prefer not to be considered Black nationalists.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Can you?
That's so funny. Oh, that's interesting. Again, I'll take this to be the folly of youth. These are mostly white children. No, I can call them children. I don't mean in a pejorative, like kind of just kind of bitchy sense. They're just young, and they, like a lot of whites, older than them, have now been fed this story of like, this is the Blacks, and the Blacks want to do this, the Blacks want that. Again, most of the time we say the Blacks, you mean Black men and whatever thing they're choosing to like pull their bullhorn out about, and Black women and children are secondary or tertiary if they're anywhere on the list to begin with. And yeah, I mean, there'll be other places for me to pull this out, because I don't understand. It's just alt-right white nationalist types either listening and just making assumptions. They don't really have a lot of firsthand experiences with Black people, particularly Black men, and what it is they actually are for, or are about in a collective sense or even an individual sense. And they're coming to the table with these notions that all this belly aching and screaming, particularly for the past decade for sure. Obviously, this goes back way longer, and whites have just kind of this is the one thing about I've been thinking about this while they talk about white flight. And even if it doesn't look like all whites move to suburbs, it becomes this time in the past 30, 40, 50 years where whites and blacks don't really interact with each other, especially outside the South. And then the whole great migration north, more ethnic whites coming to northern cities and other parts of the country where there was never this time period of living alongside of each other. There's, we go from the Polish parts of town, the German parts of towns, the Italian parts of town, and then, blacks who already been here predominantly for some period of time just coming north and spreading out of the South. And there's just a lot of things that whites just willfully, that it's to no fault, or just don't understand. But in the internet age, but again, I find it funny that they couldn't decipher this, or to some varying degree, before they're sitting down and do this stream. But anyway.
Expand on that, because I assumed you guys were black nationalists.
Well, that
assumed you were black nationalists, because as you'll start to see here, and I think the part 2 and 3, the main part that I'm making about these Hoteps, and especially because this was them, because I have not heard a lick from these people. I know the one guy has a pretty big YouTube channel, Handy Mayhem, and he's like been out here for some time. I don't know where you would have assumed that from, because it's funny, the same standards that I saw white conservatives, white National Review types, white, what we would call a basic bitch conservative, their standard opinions about, blacks and what they wanted was pretty similar. They got bitched about it, about the alt-right and a lot of the hardcore, then other elements who were super hardcore, the Jewish question and blah, blah. They got chewed out, and you were able to give them like a colonoscopy, but you can't figure out in 2 seconds just by actually looking at what these black men are saying, or these Hotepers are saying. And it was one thing, and somebody can point out to me, besides the ones who decided to come over to the alt-right and kind of try to pawn their wares and basically try to just basically get publicity for themselves. I didn't see nary a black woman doing this, which I find very telling onto itself, but we can save that for later. So he's made an assumption based on nothing, but you wouldn't give at least another white person that might just not be where you're at the benefit of the doubt, but you're willing to have some base black guys who kind of said something that's basically warmed over conservatism, just dipped in chocolate. It's kind of sad for such smart, alt-right kids, who many of them are, but they're very just blind to these things. And it's so, well, there'll be more of that to come.
That term gets thrown around a lot. Flex, you want to handle that?
Sure. Pretty much just to kind of go into what he's saying just a little bit more. We really more so want to keep black people from getting into this whole state of what you would call, or what you would consider, basically depending on the state, in a situation where black people are actually, they're helpless. They don't have any idea what's going on. They're basically being farmed, farmed for their resource, basically turning into mindless consumers, things like that. Basically, anything that you guys see that turns black people into what y'all know as Hindus, what we know as Nogs, that's basically what we're fighting against. And
this is part of it. It's 2018, Mr. Flex Hotep man. So, like I said, this channel's kind of post-mortem. And so we have someone like him sitting here on an alt-right live stream, or live stream with some people from the alt-right, not all encompassing of anyone, of any, the sum of the whole. And we want to stop mass consumerism amongst blacks and them being, farmed. And so you're slowly starting to get from here to getting in on out. And these other points I'm going to pull. There's nothing separating this Hotep-based black men in Trump hats ism from warmed over multicultural conservatism. And then I'm not even just trying to pick on these alt-righters, because I saw this Hotep Jesus guy ends up being on Red Ice Radio, a 1-hour interview with Heinrich Palmering. And then Hunter Wallace wrote up this article, Hotep alt-right, can we be allies or something? So this spread for a moment. I think it was just perfect opportunism. It gave the alt-right, the people who want to signal we want nationalism for all people, it's okay. But it's so funny. You'll invite some base black men in Trump hats in to like interview or to write these goofy blog posts that mean nothing about, but you won't give white people and you're part of your own racial group the benefit of the doubt and try to slowly work with them to bring them over. I mean, all the the conservative meme, beautiful, perfect, spot on, but for like a lot of average normie whites, because then why it's so telling to now do this a year later, because by the time you get to Charlottesville, had they maybe, I mean, this is only like one or two live streams. The other guy is just on a really more normie tier, like Patriots United tier. It's like a white woman and some Mexican man who voted for Trump. And that's all it really is. These are actual alt-writers who kind of entertain this. And this didn't really go very far. But just the fact that it happened in itself, you're so cucking about race and you're ready to tell it like it is, but then there's just still this blind spot where they can just listen to some black men magically say something that's not ooga booga and audibly where the white women's at, and let's engage this. It's really sad, but I'm a year later, and maybe I'll end up probably coming back later with a summation of this, because this is a good point for the alt-right and anybody associated with this take going forward as far as how to engage non-whites. Like, I'm a non-white person, and I probably agree, at least like, not even theory, but like there's so many aspects, like the neo-reactionary dark enlightenment side, the race is real, human biodiversity side, IQ differences, being pro, they mentioned Gavin McInnes earlier, and his whole being pro-Western and for pro-Western children, but then, and they tried to like kind of low-key shade Gavin McInnes, but what's the real difference when you're basically sitting here with them assuming that they want to protect their Western black children? But it's funny in this whole conversation, you're not going to hear black children or the role of black women or motherhood or anything mentioned here. Luckily, I don't recall if I missed it. They'll bring in, I think they bring in the welfare state once. I mean, you just have to. If you're a black man talking about fixing the community, the first thing you guys talk about is WIC women, WIC welfare. Usually I call it 3 W's, WIC, welfare, and weaves. But they might broach WIC or welfare briefly, but we'll see.
We actually believe that the overall transformation of black people to actually take us from that state as a whole to a much more, common existence where we're actually a lot more enlightened across the board. We're actually a lot more economically dependent. I believe that's going to create some of what you guys want as an ethno state, but at the same time, we're not really driving for the ethno state. We're just trying to get the independence, if that makes any sense. If it happens, it happens.
Independent from who or from what? Like you can go back now and have like a good smattering of videos here. It's, again, this is abstract. It's weird because like I just did a video saying that blacks have a problem with abstract thinking, and I think now even something that I said prior to reading that article again, I hadn't read in like 5 years. It's not abstract. Well, it's disembodied. There's like, well, become independent from this thing and stop doing this thing. And I don't know really what he's saying. That just doesn't sound like black people are probably consumers. So he's probably talking about, buying too many Jordans or buying like, getting your nails done like every week at the like Chinese nail shop. And we can move from that and be more undependent. And it's just, this is literally warmed over conservatism light. The same conservatism light that the alt-right called itself so valiant, rallying against and, taking cuck scalps online all day, every day for. And this is literally the same thing that they're saying. So I don't know how like you would derive black nationalists from this at all. I just don't know.
It happens. However, like I said, we believe in somewhat in helping you guys with your goal. Also, that's our goal. And if that's the case, hey, by all means, we're with it. But we aren't necessarily black nationalists in the sense that many alt-right might portray themselves to be.
But the funny thing is, he's saying he don't know what the hell the alt-right or alt-light even is. And I have a running start that probably leaps and bounds exceeds both of them. I'll just cap it at, let's just say 5 years. So even like a little after the term alternative right, when it was used more in that full expression, and when it was still, which is still an active website, alternative right, blogspot, it was a Colin Liddell, Richard Wollstonecraft comment writes there sometimes, Andy Nowicki, the OG alternative right blogspot. I was reading that back in the day, way, but altright.com is still, Richard Spitzer only did that since like during the election last year. So you don't even know what they are, and there's your other teammate over here said you don't really know what alt-right is, helping you guys with your goals and stuff, and we just want to get black people to stop being consumerists and shit, and blah blah blah. They're talking and then this guy Brian gave a rundown of the different factions inside white nationalism, white identity. It's like it's so funny because I kept thinking this whole time like, it's so funny when black women talk about who's at the gate, and we go back historically and look at black men, their collusion, our great grandfathers selling each other, and it's so funny. Like this is like in a really weird tangential sense. This is how this happened. I guess no, I can't firmly say that. Let me walk that back. They just have no understanding of why they're here and what they're doing. And then it's like, oh, but that's what they're really about. Oh, and they know that all five of them are kind of like, oh, okay, then what? Because again, the alt-right fantasy is this. Well, if there's all these good blacks who want to separate with the other good blacks and go do for themselves and get the fuck out of our face, and we can play roots backwards. Anybody here like from that's like a running kind of joke meme on the alt-right. Like it's probably actually maybe a white nationalism 1.0 joke that's been around forever. The idea they want to play roots backwards. So if we could just go backwards and put y'all back on that boat and just go rewind this, we could be all done with this and wash our hands of it. But now, obviously, especially in the American experiment, 200-300 years back in to this, that's obviously not happening and not the case in any logical sense that it's just going to be easy as putting the toothpaste back in the tube. So just watching all their faces like, oh, nobody knows why we're here. Neither of you have really any running conceptual understanding of what the other parties, at least in terms of description, Hotep versus alt-right actually is. And we're only like 5 minutes into this 2-hour podcast. But keep in mind, we're not watching the whole thing. The first 57 minutes are pretty solid. I just have like 4 or 5 points to move through, so this won't be a super long one. I think I laid out most of my basic understanding and giving you my impression of this, so I'll avoid trying to stop too much and just kind of let this thing play out.
It's interesting, yeah, because I was under the impression, from the few Hoteps that I have talked to, they're black nationalists, and that's what they made it sound like. Obviously, your goals are great.
Well, that's funny. She said that because the term Hotep, and I have this would be a separate video. There is a I like when people go back over to their like. It seems like a lot of extra work to do. And you used to start talking. No, let's look at the blurry camera. The funny thing is, like, there's people who identify with the term, and it's got this kind of broad swath. The article that's on Hotep Nation, I might just have to read that with y'all maybe tomorrow or sometime this weekend, because it's a term that's been around forever. I guess it's the loose disambiguation of the word is like peace. It's some random ass. I don't even know if it's like an actual ancient Egyptian word. I can't remember. I think they give you the etymology, and it's not that hard to find. I'm not gonna look it up now. It's just some random ass word that kind of associated with peace. And it's, obviously some type of African derived word. It sounds more like maybe close to like the Egyptians or, what have you than like sub-Saharan Western Africa. And so it's another thing that's problematic with even this whole story is that we don't really need any more black people LARPing as we was Egyptians and we was Kangsery going on. And yeah, so your impression like none of them know who the other people are, and it's just this kind of willful thinking. They're just I think the two Hotep Negroes thought, oh, these are some nice. This is what I was thinking when I first saw this. They're just thinking, oh, these are some nice soft white folks, and they're gonna sit here and we can talk about Trump hats and how some dumb black people some are, and welfare and hair weaves and Air Jordans. Ha ha ha! Don't you know some of those den dudes are stupid, and they were gonna laugh about that. And then finally, we'll get to this later, but with them. And this is another alt-right kind of delusional weirdness that I don't understand, because when you actually walk through the steps, it makes no sense. Well, I'll save that point. I'm gonna make a note of it. We'll cross it and I'll go into that one. But then, oh, they're going to be black nationalists too, and we could play roots backwards. There's these good black guys who are going to lead their, wayward women and children and their fellow male, the bad male dindus amongst them away. Yay, ethno state in 2 seconds. No, it's so not what's going on that it's like.
I can't remember honestly at this point. I don't think it was any like big names. It was just somebody who identified as a Hotep on Twitter. But they seemed like they wanted to kind of have complete like segregation again, where blacks were teaching black kids, and you guys had your own neighborhoods, you guys had your own schools, just basically complete segregation again.
In that sense, though, in liberal society, just not to cut you off or anything, we actually do. We're just in very shit and depraved condition. But I know, let me just go ahead and throw out as well, just like the alt-right tends to be considered a catch-all or, a large heterogeneous group. We're the same way in Hotep. So we have a lot of different segments of Hotep, and we do have those of us that are thriving for that. So like I said, just don't let the words of the few interpret, how you see whole group, because I can guarantee you that under our banner we have a lot of different types.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't even think black nationalism is bad. Like, I think it's a good thing. It's just it's the other end of what white nationalism is with a lot of the alt-right and the identitarians.
But it's actually not, and this is a way another topic itself. This is again the fundamental understanding that too many whites in these identity alt-right white nationalists don't understand. The things that black women talk about in the kind of the online circles of the sovereign movement, the more empowered black women, divesting from the black community, the whole historical problems of blackness and the relationship between black men and black women that's almost near eternal, that goes back to the continent of Africa. It's not any kind of parallel, because white nationalism, even when you find out, like, the whole drama with Matt Heimbach, that some of these trad white men is, clapping up their brother-in-law and their wife on some, Jerry Springer type stuff. This black male collectively has been selling these people forever. He's not going to be some nationalist tomorrow or at any point. And so it's not really a comparable end, because even with the faults of most whites and white people in general that any white human has, on average, you have white men who are going to take care of their women, their children, and protect at least their immediate racial kin. You don't have that with a black man in any way, shape, or form, in any collective measurement. Not now, not 50 years ago, and you can even argue not back on the continent of Africa to this day. So this is, again, a faulty premise that most of this white alt-right has drawn. This is just one example of it here in this live stream, that they really don't know who this Negro male is, and they don't know who we are as black women, because, again, as I said numerous times, we don't tell our own story. We've allowed this situation to just completely get worse and worse and worse. We won't tell our own story, and then or even we think we will, we're going to gaslight ourselves and gaslight other people, and we're not being honest about what's going on. So it's not the comparable end to anything. And you can even just tell from the lax behaviors of, the Flex guy is a little bit more, I don't want to say serious. He just seems a little more engaged. You'll kind of get something later from Uncle Handy Jesus, Hotep Jesus is demeanor here. He's just like another shit grin eating Dindu with an attitude. You'll see it later, because it's just like, these men aren't leading you anywhere. So no, it's not the comparable end of anything, sweetheart, because you don't really understand black people. You don't understand this, especially in America, in a very profound history. Again, because you don't know, because black women sure aren't telling it. The black male has made his own kind of like very handy version to spread to everyone that has a lot of holes and only tells maybe an eighth of a story. But no, it's really not the logical end of white nationalism. Black nationalism is just black men circle jerking about perceived power and asking where the white women's at 10 minutes later, or where the red bones at, or the light skinned women, mulatto women. Yeah, it's literally not the same thing.
Here's the thing: when you say that Hotep wants to be black nationalists, or people want to be black nationalists, this sets up a dichotomy and basically says that there is a counterpart to us. And it is my philosophy that we are completely ignoring the counterpart. Therefore, there is no need for nationalism. To say that we are focused on ourselves does not say that we need to think about white people. You know, like that's my thing. White people aren't even on my radar. So there's no reason to think about separation. To say I want separation, I have to think about white people. I'm not thinking about white people.
But wouldn't you need to think about white people in the same way that I think about black people? When I am thinking about, I believe it was you that it was either you or Uncle Hotep that sent out first the tweet, something about your tribe first, nationality second, and that resonated with me quite a bit. You do need to think about other people, not in the sense that I need to take care of them, but in the fact that there are other people in the world. So what do I do about these other people in the world to protect my tribe and my people? That's how I think about the black people. I don't dislike blacks as a whole. I mean, you guys are awesome for sitting down here with us. But, at the end of the day, if there was, 3 cheeseburgers, you guys ain't getting them. It's me and mine, So, and I would hope that if there was 2 cheeseburgers, you guys would get them if you had the cheeseburgers.
Well, the thing is, if there were 3 cheeseburgers, right, and they were sitting in the middle, and there was 3 alt-right people and 3 Hotep people, right, and we were sitting at this border, and there was 3 cheeseburgers, and that was the only thing there, you would say you would take all the cheeseburgers. I would say, let's cut the cheeseburgers in half. Let's give you guys half, and we take the other half because we're civil human beings.
Well, of course. I mean, in this situation, yes. But what I was using that as an example of is that I am going to advocate for my race having, like, if I didn't know you guys, and just meeting you for, 10 minutes, I already like you guys. Of course, we'd split the cheeseburgers, but in a greater sense of things, I need to look after mine before I can look after anyone else's. You've got to make sure that you're
absolutely. And I think that's the whole point I'm alluding to, is the fact that we have to put our people first. And I think that at this point, we need a huddle before we can take it to the playing field. Because right now we're operating out of the no huddle. So the teams on the field looking really discombobulated. What I'm saying is, let's draw back, let's build a plan, and then we can come back and think about how we're going to associate with the other teams.
I think that's exactly true, and I think that's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was about to say, just kind of expound on that. Basically, I mean, it's not necessarily saying that, we're just acting like white people don't exist. We're just focusing on ourselves to the extent to where we're not worried we're not really worried what white people are doing on this end. We're more so just so focused, and we want to have communities that can be independent of white people. Not necessarily saying we're trying to just create these all black societies. Like I said, that might be white nationalism's goal. With us, it's probably going to happen organically, but our goal is to be so independent of white people that you guys, it's almost as if you guys didn't even exist. In that sense, that's basically where we kind of focus on. So when it comes to our.
So just starting there, so what if you're employed? Like, I'm employed by a white person. Good smattering of black people. If you're the fortune of, or if you're gonna consider it that, you're employed by a black person. How many black people in this country that are working adults are employed by other black people? I'm not gonna bring up social welfare because I'll just do it loosely. If you receive any type of subsidies, like welfare subsidies in any form, food, shelter, whatever, and if they're derived from the general pot, with whites the majority of the country, majority the tax monies would be coming from them. So then you're a recipient of white tax monies. How do you just automatically get to this point where you're not thinking about white people when your employment, the person who built your house, person that provides your internet, all those different things that you interact with white people for? So how and when are black people going to just step in and assume all those roles for themselves? They're both kind of talking a little bit in circles, and it's we're self-sufficient and we want self-sufficiency and stuff, but they're just talking in circles. And you've heard enough of me now. Go back to some of my older vids. Like some of this is just kind of some older things, but this is now me kind of broaching into some more alt-right critique and trying to hone in on that. I've kind of already picked apart, and will continue to, but I don't want to dwell too much on picking apart Black thought or lack thereof, and especially in terms of really saying anything that means something that isn't just, kind of warmed over goody-goodyisms. But you guys are like, oh, well, it's only been 2 minutes, but I like you guys. You know what's so funny? Because the other thing, too, like, is the conditioning that a lot of whites, particularly these younger whites, and this is maybe where some of the edge of the alt-right is coming from. These are a lot of little younger whites who now have been conditioned to, like, kind of defer to, like, Black people, particularly Black men, and, like, oh, well, you guys are nice, and like, way he just kind of said that, I just found a little bit kind of goofy, like, it's only been 10 minutes, and then within the first 5, you're realizing you guys are not talking about anything near the same thing. They don't understand who you are, and you don't understand who they are. But you guys all like each other. That's great.
Our movement's goal, that's where we're really focusing.
So I get your movement with that, and I think that's great. But then at the same side of the coin, you have the government, which is forcing integration on top of us. So, that's the issue that I see, is that actually having to change policy within the government for you guys to be able to do what you want with your own communities.
Well, the government can't impose integration if you have your own. The problem.
Did he really just say that? Like, again, here and other places, this is my impression of him. And it's kind of the Hotep thing all in all. These were attention-seeking Negroes, and they saw a really great target to come in, because they see it with, like, you can see it with the normie Black conservative types. Like, I found this, like, teen Black kid. He's like a sophomore in high school on Twitter. He's got like 50,000 followers. He's wearing like a little navy suit, and he's like, I'm the liberals' worst nightmare. And this is something that they, the alt-right and a lot of the dissident rights talked about for some time. Just finding like these brown conservatives to show up and wrap themselves in the American flag and talk about how they fought against liberal policies and Democrat plantation and yada, 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 yada. So the government, okay, I'm going to just leave one thing here, and I'll make a note of this because it's something I've wanted to revisit for a while. I first was made aware of this case and just kind of general history around it on stuff Black people don't like. Paul Kersey's, I think he changed it over to like Because We Live Here. Well, that's at least his handle on Twitter. Shelley versus Kramer. I believe that was in St. Louis in the 50s, and that was a Supreme Court case, the one that kind of is most associated with restrictive covenants and the kind of, I guess, ending of that practice in terms of, private home, like the things we talk about, like Blacks on redlining, and some whites wouldn't let you buy or sell here. Think of the play Raising the Sun, what have you. So the government is not been enforcing diversity. You look at the desegregation photos, and that wasn't Brown versus Words, because Ruby, the little Black girl who desegregated the school. That's like one of the more famous stories that you see of that era. So the National Guard wasn't on standby in a lot of those places with bayonets. If diversity, I'm gonna quote Jared Taylor here loosely, obviously. But if diversity is so great, why did it have to be like strong armed at the end of a bayonet? So no, I don't know where he's getting that from, but we're getting close to I'm glad this is getting close to another point. So I just let this go a little bit longer than I would have in this kind of middle point. So there's one coming up right here at the 12-minute and 30-second mark. And then from there, a little more jumping.
White people and Black people don't have their own. I call them the niggers of the world, white people and Black people. When you look at
they're both the niggers of the world. Oh my God, so edgy. Like
Asians, the Arabs, everybody else is succeeding just fine. Even the Zionists are doing great. So that's my perspective on that.
Oh man, I imagine by the end of the chat we're going to talk about the Zionists.
We'll get there eventually. Mention Zionists, and we're just like,
Exactly. So actually, I made the note. I'll come to now. So this is with the beginning of this. They just want too many of these alt-right edgy kids. And again, I'm not trying to be, just to me by saying that there's young people who talk about the Jews, and it's so edgy and the echoes. And of course, there's a whole host of questions about Jews, Zionism, and everything to be discussed. Nobody's saying that it isn't. It permeates every corner of the like alt-right, white nationalist kind of sphere. Everything from Kevin McDonald and Culture of Critique, and then Luke Ford, who's another YouTuber who I'm really digging right now. He had 2 live streams today, and I haven't had a chance to watch them yet, or just kind of listen to him during the day. But so they just want someone to giggle with about the Jew, because it's another fallacy of the alt-right. And I'm going to boil this really quickly down, because I'm going to try to talk about this separately too. There's this idea that kind of permeates. Well, the Jews, like, so it's weird. It's just the next level of the normie conservative argument. Those Democrats put the blacks on the plantation and they can't get off the plantation. We got to get them off the Democrat plantation. And then the alt-right version is just the next two-step, it's the next two-step box step away from that. It's the Jews and the Zionists who created the NAACP and made you blacks, and they're treating you blacks worse than they treat us. And won't you want to come with us and rise up against the Jews? And there's so many ways for me to shoot this down. I'm just gonna pick one quickly to keep moving. Think about your media, your Hollywood, and the sports industry, the entertainment industry, and the abundance of black men there. Now, let's take Hollywood and the music industry, just the 2 most obvious glaring examples. And think about the amount of wealth, at least for a large period of time, with the download culture and, excuse me, a lot of that has changed. But think about the predominant amount of wealth and, just visibility and, fame that comes from that positioning in Hollywood and the music industry of black men, rap, hip hop, just like now the more popular just music culture where you see them very highly visible. And then who, echo, is predominantly overrepresented that industry, and is who are those shot callers in both industries. So you think these 2 black men obviously aren't there and are in this. So let's say there was some way this all worked. You think they're gonna be able to go and talk to their brothers over in those 2 industries and like, hey guys, let's rise up against the Jews, and they're gonna look at them like, really? No, get the hell out of my face. So it's just this weird kind of this goofiness that they just want someone to sit around. I can talk about the JQ, the Zionist Q, the JQ, the ZQ with the best of them. And I think right now Luke Ford is probably doing some really great work as an Orthodox Jew convert. And the questions and just the counterpoints that he brings up on his channel. And I highly recommend him to anyone right now. So there's just too much of this one circle jerk and giggle about the Jews. Oh, it's so edgy, and the happy merchant meme. Like during that last year, and I engaged in the course. It's funny and it's cool. It's triggering, especially me being a Nog or a Dindu. It's kind of the way I kind of go, well, look, everybody's got to have somebody to kind of punch down against. They can punch down on me for being a Dindu, but I can go over to like, for instance, I love Savage Hippie podcast. It's probably my favorite podcast right now with Edwin Oslin, David Cole, and Ann Sturzinger. And David and Edwin are both Jews. Luke Ford's a Jew convert. And, they both are pretty much tangential to this general alt-right, dissident right scene. And, it's there. And they have these discussions about Jewishness and Zionism and all that stuff. But that's what these kids want. And then later on, you'll keep seeing this. They just want to giggle about the Jews with them. And damn the fact that the Hotep and alt-right have nothing to really talk about, that this whole conversation is just kind of goofy to begin with. But, ooh, let's talk about the Jews and echoes. So fun. Tee-hee-hee.
Oh, that's our favorite conversation.
No shit. Yeah.
Well, my question is Hotep then a separatist movement in the same sense that, like, I understand an ethno-state is our motivating myth. It is the thing that, like, keeps us moving forward to advocate for white interests. But obviously, I'd be happy if we could go back to segregation in schools, segregation and right to associate and right to disassociate, which is like, this is my restaurant. I'm sorry, black guy, you don't get to sit at the counter. I wouldn't do that if I were in a restaurant because it's just bad business. But maybe I've got a Nazi bar, and blacks aren't allowed in.
I love that.
I don't want the government.
You see, I love that. The only thing I'm getting out here, like, there's no, black women down there sitting here, we marching and Black Lives Mattering. And I mean, in some weird way, I guess, But no, because especially as a Black woman, particularly things that I've learned and even come to accept within the past year or so, I would become that person in a sense. Like I'd have a much better conversation with these kids. We wouldn't giggle so much and maybe have as much fun, but they would probably get a lot more from someone like me as a Black woman, primarily because it's a conversation that is never had. You get the normie Black women, conservative types who, they're still on Twitter, on YouTube, and, loving Trump and wearing their Trump hats, but they kind of tend to go relatively ignored. But even with them, they aren't really broaching this far. But not even that these Hoteps are anything edgy. They just happen to be Black guys who kind of like saw an opportunistic moment to latch onto this stuff. But I would love that. See, Black women, when you don't tell your own story and you don't know, like, and as someone who voted for Trump, someone that's more alt-right, dissident right inclined, at least in political theory, and kind of a cultural history that I kind of understand and agree with a lot of the points that they're making and a lot of the historical overview they bring to the table. So I have to put that there first before I say this, because you need to understand that clearly. But then I could put this hat on and say, Black women, you see, when you don't tell your story, you got these Black men sitting here with these evil white nationalists, white supremacist alt-righters, telling them, oh, I'd be fine with that. There's plenty of Black women on Black Twitter over in their little feminist movement and doing and all this stuff that would not be happy with this. But see, you keep calling him and you don't speak up. And these are the things they're over here telling these alt-righters, oh, we'd be happy with it. It says Black people is a code word for Black men. Damn what Black women and children think or feel or how they can even take this. But when you let him speak on your behalf of this race like he's some leader or something, which he absolutely is not, this is what happens. I'd be fine with that. I personally, individually, as me, who believes in pure freedom of association, I would be fine with that. And I'm cool with that. He may be, which I believe is faking to be cool with this. But I can see many a Black woman online being like, what are you over here telling these people this about? So we want to go back and do all this stuff. You one Black man who represents yourself. You don't represent the Blacks. But again, when Blacks and Black people is just a code word for Black men, as it has been, if not forever, for a considerable amount of time, then they can just answer and say yes in the affirmative. Damn what Black women or children think about it.
Coming down and saying, hey, you're not allowed to have a Nazi bar.
Yeah, I love that, because I hate the fact that Black people think about white people so much. That's my thing. It's like, I want people to pull back the energy that they keep giving white people. Like, oh, white people, white supremacy, white people, white people, white people. I'm like, yo, fuck them. like, what about you? What are you doing for you? And that's my whole thing when it's talking about like segregation. My segregation isn't about this whole separate school. This is your water fountain. This is my bottle. That's not what I'm talking about when I talk about separating. What I'm saying is pull back the attention from the other groups and refocus it. But if you do start pointing fingers, at least point it at the right places. It's like Arabs still have Black people as slaves today. There's ethnic cleansing happening there. If you're going to point a finger, let's start pointing there. Argentina is practicing ethnic cleansing with their white population, their 90% plus white population in Argentina and South America. Let's start there. DR is practicing ethnic cleansing. Let's start there. Israel is practicing ethnic cleansing. We keep sending them aid. Let's start there. Because what white people have done, according to the history books, is not true. White people haven't done much.
Well, I mean, we just...
What? And the thing is, oh, well, it's separate water fountains or separate water bottles. I'm just thinking about energy, man. Number one, you sound like a hippie. Number two, they're talking about tangible, obviously I can embellish or add a little bit more context, to where these guys are just kind of like talking and hanging, and someone kind of way more that is probably as familiar with much more the alt-right, white nationalists, white separatists, white platform in that regard. I'm more familiar with that. So I can flesh out what he was saying. Like, they want their own separate schools, separate places to live and being. And this Hotep Dindu is just prattling on with this hippy dippy, like, separate your energy, man. Just like giving white folks energy. Yeah, we all would like Black people to stop whining and acting like a bunch of like spoiled little crybabies. But that's not even what they're saying. They're basically saying, yes, but that's a given at this point. We just want to be separate. Well, we don't want physical separation, man. Like, we'll just like do this, man. That's not, they're so beyond that in this scene. So to even walk into like a conversation like this, it's just really, I just think so. This is almost in a weird way proof. This is a conversation that coming with black women. He's just not fit to lead us. It's one man, but you can extrapolate the same lackadaisical attitude that he's having this conversation, not really being able to grasp onto like the concepts that they're throwing out here and to react to them specifically, to not probably done any basic research to be prepared for this. Just showing up, sit on camera, and just like the typical kind of average black male attitude, the shuck and jive kind of like, oh, well, ha, 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 the Jews, and let's laugh and giggle. Like, they're so happy just making white folks laugh and giggle. And the black woman is so weird because if they're just more of a balance, they don't mind just showing up and acting a plumb fool, to make whites kind of giggle. But the black woman sits there, her arms folded, her neck in a permanent roll, hand on her hip, just all angry in the collective sense. And, it's almost a reversal because usually the men are the like ones in the race or clan that are super stern, quick to react, and just like super like Rrr. And the women and girls tend to just float around more and just be kind of like all the leaves are brown and the sky is gray. But it's such a weird reversal in the black race. I just can't imagine, I would say besides me, and it would be a much different conversation. It would be like the same. I'd be laid back and making a few jokes, but I'd be actually addressing your points because I have researched them and I know what you're talking about. I wouldn't just be sitting there goofing off, but it's funny that with us it's just a reversal in the race. So that's another reason they're not trying to be national anything, because the black male doesn't lead anything in the black race. He's just there. The women and the children do the birthing, the washing, and the cleaning in the black race. The black male is just kind of there. He just kind of floats around. So if you really want to, that's like probably one of our closing points to them. You really want to talk to who runs the race, you got to talk to black women, because we're the womb of the race, and we're the ones that every time, like, I remember Kendall did a video about, you go to Africa, and many experiences she's had with black women who from there, live there, you see women carrying water on their damn head, babies on their back. Here, there, you see black men playing around with their cell phones. You see, like in the Congo, they're dressing as dandies and buying fancy shoes, sitting around drinking palm wine. The women run the race in my race. It doesn't have to be that way forever, and I don't want it to be that way, but that's where the changes come from. You just want to sit around and circle jerk with a bunch of goofy Negroes, and then giggle about the Jews. Well, just pull out some popcorn and just have fun giggling.
It's some cool shit, but I like where you're going with that.
Things, there's other people. It seems like black people only think white and black, and it's like, well, Asians had a dynasty, and Indians had a dynasty, and all these other cultures had dynasties. Why are they not in the conversation?
Well, that's I think is a major problem, and I was talking to Andrew Keith before the show about this. Is how Sean, you got an invader going on.
Yeah. The other host of the podcast. So.
I think that no, we're just going to dive right into it. The Jewish elite like to kind of pit whites and blacks against each other, and no other person besides white people have been as screwed over by the Jew as the blacks, and they're still constantly enslaved. We see that going on in Africa and all this. You're like, why don't you get some more copper there, Negro? And it's it's constant. And then whatever. I've got a phone. I like it. It's nice, but that happens, and then they go like, hey, don't you guys hate each other because like your rap music and your Toby Keith, like fight, I think we have a lot more in common than we think, but I don't. To be quite frank, I don't want I just don't want you guys breeding with my women or in my neighborhood. Like, you're great people, but just
bam. That's what my note says. Bam, white man. Now he had to kind of stumble a bit and stutter a bit to say it, but there you go. Just put it on out there. And see, if you already had come to the table with those as being basic understandings, yeah, it was nice to have this podcast, and maybe some people on the fence like, oh, look, they're talking with the blacks and blah, 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 great. But yeah, like I don't want you race mixing with my women, and I don't want you in my neighborhood. And you see both of them just kind of, it's like almost in a way, like I'm not making a comparative sense. It's not, they're not doing the same thing. And I'm going to be totally fair here. It's that video of the black man with his white girlfriend. And you could tell they were kind of, they pre-scripted it. It was like from a few years ago when they were first starting to come to YouTube and try to find a white women and be like, this is why he don't date black women because they got weaves and they ghetto. Da, 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 da. And you know, there's this moment, a couple moments he's sitting like, wow, you went there, oh. And he's kind of like, you know, the way you start laughing because you know you shouldn't be laughing. It's a little inappropriate. You kind of put your hand over your mouth and kind of put your head down a little bit, but he's still kind of giggling a bit. And it's so funny because like a little bit kind of what you're seeing in their faces right there. And I'm making a complete assumption, a bald assumption I have no answer to. The flex one particularly strikes me as one who dates white women or dates non-black women. Not exclusively. I'm not saying exclusively or anything like that. That's my business. I don't care. The other one, who knows? Kind of like on the fence there. Or that they have or have the potential to date non-black women. And then we'll just kind of just ergo just draw the through line to white women. So, and even more so, interestingly enough, this is the kind of scene or black people you kind of like, I don't know if I could do some scientific study that the black people who are maybe more drawn or open to these ideas and able to maybe conceive of these, but then you have to maybe adjust for class or region where they live, they might just be more prone to probably dating interracially. We can maybe have these strong convictions about race and about ourselves as black people individually, and maybe within like our group of immediate family and immediate circles of people, but you know, I don't even know why. Like that's something that these people should really start considering and thinking about too. But yeah, it's really funny. Like I don't want your race mixing with my women. Well, bam, there you go, there you go, there you go. That should have been maybe a pre-screen question that they could have asked before. But anyway, I'm glad he finally just got to it and said that. So you know what? From here, let's see how they respond. Basically, this is the funny part. They don't really respond. Let me just double check. It's been a minute since I watched this.
Go elsewhere. Like, what? I mean, what happened when black people were making jazz music? Now they're making this Waka Flocka Flame bullshit, and I just can't get on. I blame the Jews.
Why are you blaming the Jews? Like, this is the music they make. They want to make it. What about when they were making jazz? You know, like what, like the 40s? You know, and that's one other thing. There's a lot of this crime and degeneracy of black race goes way before the 60s, way before the welfare state, before the Democratic plantation, all that jazz, literally. But because of certain social restrictions that were either legal or they were just kind of culturally understood social pressures, a lot of the black degeneracy during the jazz and when they were sometimes married to parent households, just meaning they were legally married on paper and lived together, if anything, this stuff was already happening. So he's already kind of regurgitating some of this like conservatism ink, like, but when you guys go back to like making the jazz and when there was two parents in the home and da da da, like there's so much more going on there below the surface, man. But yeah, that's just a great quote. You could just make a video off of that. I don't want you mixing white women. Go get your own
Blame
stuff.
white people, because if it wasn't for white people,
are not Jewish.
hold
The
on.
Jews are not white, man. It's the Jews that did this to you. Don't blame us.
Hold on a second. You didn't let me finish my statement. Hold on before you get crazy.
Let's go.
Okay? If it wasn't for white people showing up at the concerts, black people wouldn't make a living because black people don't buy music and they don't buy concerts.
Dropping out the bandwidth. That is a familiar phrase, dropping out the bandwidth.
We black people bootleg music. So the consumers of music are who? It's your people. Tell them stop listening to black music. They can't get enough of it.
I like Kanye, dude. I love Kanye. That's something I'm guilty of. I love Kanye.
Well, I know this is another often repeated meme, all right? Like Armenians aren't white, the Irish aren't white, Italians aren't white. So yeah, Kanye and Kim Kardashian much? Because I know there's the divide. Well, some whites are better than or lesser than other whites. So you think about Armenians, Slavs, Italians, Irish. You know, they kind of have like kind of a maybe more downgraded, less Aryan status or less European status. But you like Kanye West, race mixing with Kim Kardashian. Okay.
That's good gym
Black
music.
people-
I can't help it.
Black people can't afford Kanye shoes. They can't afford his concert tickets. They can't afford his clothing. So who's buying it?
Somebody's doing it. Somebody is doing it. There's a culprit.
Okay. You know, it's like
I was about to say,
go ahead, Flex.
look, We just make it hot. We popularize it, but you guys go ahead, throw the funding behind it.
Right.
The next thing you know, you guys think, some of your guys think we're cool. So it's like, hey,
No.
we can't help the appeal that like people having some senses when it comes to pop culture and all that. We can't help that now.
No.
Go ahead and make it cool.
No, it's the Jews that are they're behind that. They're pushing that onto our youth that make it cool. All right, I promise you, it's the Jews, dude.
Don't worry. We're not taking any culpability away from the Jews on this one. Like I said.
Okay, we'll just leave that point there because there's only maybe 2 or 3 more that I want to hit. So let's jump ahead. My note just says the left BB conservatism. Because he just kind of goes off on this tangent, I think is another key point here.
You pretty much have an excuse. You don't really have very much Twitter anymore, so you don't really see what we're at. But I think one of the main things that we are on is calling out fake news sources, calling out the inconsistency when they run these narratives. Now, that's really what a lot of us Hoteps have actually gotten popularized for. We're almost whistleblowers that check the media a lot. People come to us to see, oh, hey, this article is published right here. Let's look at the facts. Let's check the oh, okay, we just said it's bullshit. White people weren't the ones who did this first. Okay, this was something that happened in the air community. We like consistency, and one of the main things we do to combat that is we want to combat the misinformation that's being spread to Black people. Because most times, if you have a debate with, say, a very ardent Black liberal on Twitter, one of the main things they do is they quote the Huffington Post, Vox, Salon, or these other sources. Something we do is we call that out. We go ahead and we make a very strong point to say, no, this is not what happened. What happened is this. We have a team of researchers within our group for that purpose. I think that's one of the main things of, getting people to stop focusing on what white people do in society is to actually call out the inconsistency when they try to run these narratives. Just basically just throw the truth on it, because otherwise they're going to have you guys very 6 feet under. They're going to be using us to freaking do it,
Okay, so Black liberals use normie liberal SJW news sources and say things. Okay, so this on top of some of the other points that they both made here, they're just normie Black conservatives and Trump hats. We're calling up the liberal media, y'all. Okay, and I mean, even there's some better, I don't want to say better, so not the word. I'm trying to attack any of the alt-right kids in this particularly, but there's better people that you could use as maybe an example to actually debate issues. And this is even where I see why some people say, well, we shouldn't even be interviewing or talking with non-whites. And when I see stuff like this, I fundamentally understand, because if you haven't had a screen of what they actually believe and what they think, you just end up in these weird arguments hey, we talked to a non-white person, particularly a Black person, and it was cordial because, predominantly it's just hostile, autistic screeching from Black people, especially the liberals and even some more normie types. But it's funny, Tree of Logic did an interview with Richard Spencer and with Mike Enoch, and the David Duke one was like a dumpster fire. But, she had her very normal Black conservative type talking points and very pro-Israel. But they had a host of other things to kind of talk about, examine, and I felt that it was pretty a lot more fruitful. So, I don't know. All this was just the liberals. We call it the liberal media. Though they're not Black nationalists, they're not Black separatists. They don't want segregation. They don't want an ethno state. They don't really want anything, or they haven't even just in a very loose sense said, these are 2 or 3 things I actually know about the alt-right, and here I am to offer them to you. So I guess this video is defining the difference in what is Hotep, but it just seems kind of silly. Do we really need these kind of discussions where we talk to 2 random Black guys and just kind of putz around? I don't know. Especially with the high points of hostility racially that were being stoked up by the last election, I think it does make sense. So I actually can kind of admit that now, looking at this a little bit more so. But again, we're calling it liberal media. Okay, which is just normie conservatism. I don't get how this Hotep is some particular Black thing. It's telling Black people not to listen to Democrats all the time and be a little more critically thinking. Don't buy too many tennis shoes and, fancy nails. I don't know how this is not just normie Black conservatism.
Yeah, the one thing that I see though a lot is that a lot of like, I guess the nogs, as you call them, shines, whatever. They like call you guys like a bunch of like terrible names, and they like literally hate all of you. That's I don't know how you change mainstream opinion to how you guys think when you're getting such a hard pushback from the people you're trying to help.
Really? Man, they're helping themselves to the airtime, the Twitter followers, and then like the site like Hotep Nation, which is just some goofy blogs. I think they sell their own water on it. I'm not going to go over to it in this video. But like, no, they're not helping anyone. They don't have a plan. They didn't even know what they were really stepping into here. It's just basically black people should be different and stop whining so much. I feel that way. I think we maybe now the tide is turning up where other black people get sick of other black people's goofiness, and we're kind of moving a little bit away from just a kind of complete lock stop group thing. But they're not here to help anybody but themselves. They don't have any plans, no orchestration, just coming online, triggering some other black people by being edgy, kind of like quasi Trump supporters. And where blacks challenging the liberals and liberal media, they call them such terrible names. So they're gonna lead. They're gonna be black nationalists lead the race, huh? People call them terrible names, and then we need to pull out tissue for them. Okay.
Well, here's the.
Actually, let me pause that, because that was actually the last bit. That's one thing, you see her like, they call them poor names. Poor names. Okay. So 22, 25.
I guess Mike, I have a question, because this is, I don't know if I agree with a lot of this, but we'll get into that after. Are you guys like far right, far left, centrist, left to center, right of center?
I mean, all those terms you just said are bullshit. So I don't know. Like, what does left mean and what does right mean? The thing when I say right, it's just because it's the opposite of the left. But that doesn't mean I align with the right. And then when you say center, then center, is that like libertarian? Like, what does that mean? And
yeah,
it's like maybe I'm not center. Maybe I'm just leaning to the right a little bit more than center.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they kind of do have a meaning to them. Like, far right people are usually hyper isolationists, nationalists, care more about their people, and then the further right you get, the more genetic and ethnic it gets. But a lot of from what you're saying sounds more like you're aspiring of Marxist views, where, like the way that I look at it is this: we have we're in the identity politics game. There's no way that we can really put it back into where it was in the 90s or the 80s. I mean, even then, there was still an identity politics game, but now it's just hyper. Everything's hyper. So
identity politics was created in the 1400s by the Pope when he issued the papal bull, Dum Diversus. That's when identity politics started.
Yeah, but in America, in America and the world too, it's made its resurgence like after the 60s. After the civil rights and everything ended. Like, the way that, I mean, Jared Taylor kind of argued this, but the benefits of diversity are you have the Civil War, you have slavery, none of these things want to be redone. You have the civil rights movement, then you have Black Lives Matters now, and even just the racial divide in the country that what we have now, and it's not even between whites and blacks, it's Mexicans now too, and Latinos. So I guess I don't understand why segregation doesn't make sense to you guys as much as it makes sense to us.
In what regard, if you mind me asking?
The fact that we're kind of forcing this at this point, it's kind of an unnatural thing. Like, the freedom of immigration and the rates that we're able to do it are a turn of the century thing. Boat technology or naval technology and aerial technology advanced so much that our forefathers, even, not that I'm going to like defend them because I have a ton of problems with the Constitution too, but they never foresaw us having to deal with getting refugees from like Somalia or anywhere from Africa for that matter. They didn't really see this demographic thing changing.
I'm going to pause it right there, because I just kind of want you to get the little grasp right there. Like, well, that's just bullshit. And if when I do the Red Ice interview with him, he does that same kind of like little bit of arrogant, like, I mean, I get what he was saying. Is it's the internet. Everybody likes to like kind of shit post in real life and be kind of, inflammatory. But especially considering the circumstances, being two black men on this channel or on this podcast and in this kind of circle, like, do you really want to be kind of a dick like that, just be kind of goofy like that? Nothing you're saying is really all that high-minded or any that intellectual well thought out, and it just seemed like a really dickish thing to do. And I see him doing the Red Ice interview too. So I just kind of want to point that out. And so it's funny, I think with the Sean guy, there's like maybe 2 more bits left. He starts to get a little bit more, I guess, visibly annoyed, to say the least, with Mr. Hotep Jesus. So let's just move along to...
Just separate ourselves.
Hey, I'm all for it if it happens de facto. One of the main things, though, and this will probably answer, a little bit, or throw a little bit of context to your earlier question about, political alignment when it comes to Hoteps, is that me personally, I view myself as a centrist. A little bit, I don't really lean left or right, except for, on specific issues. So I'm very centrist, although I have a lot of libertarian principles. So most of that meaning that I don't want, in the word to establish an ethno-state, I don't want you guys to end up having government basically go full-on authoritarian and basically de facto basically de jure establish a white ethno-state and a black like
most
that.
Of us do.
Yeah, no, I want an authoritarian government.
Wait, but you guys are gonna become authoritarian. So, he's like nice. He's picked up some of these kind of conservative, anti-government, anti-state, like this, like kind of like Dinesh D'Souza tier, who the real Nazis were, the Nazis, and and he's like, no, we actually kind of don't mind that, there's no familiarity with these guys, like the right wing death squad, that kind of meme and that idea, the Pinochet type of just all of the varying kind of memes about having a more authoritarian style government in terms. Now this is a debate that can be had, and it's definitely had over and over again amongst the alt-right white identity type of thought. Do we want maybe something we obviously are kind of finding something wrong with democracy as it's set up, and perhaps if it's like that old thing that I had a T-shirt I bought at a tea party once that said this. It was like, it's like the old Ben Franklin quote: people who want security without liberty, or liberty without security, deserve neither. Those who would trade liberty for freedom, liberty for security, or security for liberty, deserve neither. So it's kind of like what he's saying there is an extension of that kind of conservative, basic libertarian thought. And they're like, no, they've moved on to a very specific racial, ethnic, nationalist identity that's specifically white, specifically pro-white, specifically pro-white nationalist. And so you're getting guys like this to show up, it's like we have the whole bring a knife to a gunfight type of idea or argument, and they don't really understand this is what these folks want. And they're like, well, no, this is something that's talked about. I mean, just a half a day or a bit of time, just going through some who are the guys? Okay, Richard Spencer, he's got alternative right. And he mentioned Jared Taylor. Okay, go over American Renaissance. Okay, VDare, go over there, read VDare and Peter Brimlow's work. I mean, I'm just so basically familiar with just how to find the most basic levels of information about something I'm interested in, that I just find it's really funny for him to say this. They're not this is again we talk about how it's almost like a weird living example of the racial difference between thought to a certain degree. They've left these ideas behind, all right. You're like, well, I don't want the government to come over and authoritarianize you. They're because again, I remember Beyond Conservatism was one of the NPI talks 2 or 3 years ago. And yeah, beyond conservative, beyond these convictions of liberty, freedom, a constitution, and they're talking about pure racial identity, and evidence in changes to the government at every level. Not maybe just complete wholesale, even then for some, just maybe taking 2 or 3 or 5 or more states of Pacific Northwest. And you're like, well, gotta worry about the authoritarian government, guys. Don't you know? Mm-hmm. He's like, no, we actually kind of want that. It was like, whoa. That was funny.
Ask you
Well,
guys about.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you really fast.
Yes,
quick
please.
point. How is it that you guys are going to stake claim when the Jews are going to enslave you or kick you out? So I want to know is how are you going to dethrone the Jews to get your land?
I mean,
Working with the Hoteps, I hope.
Okay, well let's say we shake hands and we say we're going to move forward from here. What is the plan?
What's the plan? You know, I was thinking about this and I was getting started. Like, what's the plan? So they like just taking this discussion that Kendall had on a video a year ago. She said, oh, hey, some of you brothers like to show up in the comment section. Tell sisters, you know, oh, well, you know, you need to do this, you need to submit, you need to, like, you know, follow us in the home, blah, blah. So funny, you can have crickets. Now, I'm just isolating him and particularly these two black men, just an example. But she said, you know, where's the plan, black man? Where are the schematics? Where are the plans? You know, we submit, what are you guys going to build? What are you going to produce? But so it's funny, you can find him find a black male. I'm not trying to say he's one of these guys that was over there and now he's over here asking these white and alt-righters how to build. But isn't that funny? Like, they can, not they, like, but they can find these circles to come laugh and, you know, smack gum and basically act like they're in like a virtual barbershop and just sit around and chew the fat. When, you know, you actually ask black men seriously on that side of the table to come do something, so they can ask where the plan is for these alt-righters so they can team up and, you know, super friends to throw on the Jews. But I just found that really stark. Like, wow, you know, they can make plans over here in these hypothetical conversations, but yeah. So there's like two more. Oh, well, actually, no, this is the 3, 3, 2, 1.
The higher caste of India now.
Are you familiar with the Eve gene?
No.
Oh God.
Sorry, I was just doing a king.
I'm not familiar with that either, so let's
Yeah,
I want to know.
If it's the thing I'm thinking about, it's the we all descended from. I'm Irish, okay, so I've got more Neanderthal DNA than the average white person.
Yeah,
so
yeah, they used to sell Irish people for the quarter of the price of an African. You guys were like,
yeah,
hey, listen.
Copper pieces, man.
Impression points do I get? How many impression points do I get for that? My people were enslaved.
I was about to say, we get a fucking white halfway through.
Before they enslaved white people, they enslaved white women. Yo, I swear to God, I can't wait to give y'all ethno steaks. I'm gonna sit in Africa from my hut and watch y'all kill each other.
Jesus fuck.
You're all gonna.
Is that like supposed to be funny? I mean, I get, you know, they're all just kind of giggling now at this point, but like, seems like an odd thing to say, you know.
Kill each other. Because you don't know who's who. He's Irish, and somebody's gonna say, "Oh, we don't fuck with the potato niggers," and the other one's gonna say, "We don't fuck with the niggers, and we don't fuck with the Italians." And it's gonna be like, "Oh, well, you know, that's what they wanted." So, you know, I'm gonna tune in a pay-per-view and watch you guys devour each other like you did.
That's the thing. No, but that's the thing with America, though, is that those of us who are like American white nationalists are kind of pan-European in a sense of which they aren't over in Europe because they actually differentiate between German, French, Polish, Italian. And I mean, it's why I know Irish are Irish, but I still don't see Bryden as white to me. He's kind of the same. Like he's part of.
That's not what my white followers say. My white followers say they do not like Irish people.
I mean,
so yeah, I get called a potato nigger.
Yeah, so that's what they would say, but like, you know, and maybe in the past, but there's obviously like, I know it's just maybe just being cheeky, but it is actually an interesting point because when she made the differentiation between like the more European, different types of nationalist parties that are kind of coming into play in different countries. And again, this is something that warrants discussion. You know, the idea of white has been a lot of different ethnicities kind of collapsed and compressed down into what we think of as white, where even in America's early, I'd say up until about maybe 1960, with the Italians being the last kind of group to really fold into like, even though they still kind of have their own standoffishness about just themselves as like a white group, but a very specific ethnic white group. Same with the Irish for the most part too, because the Irish had really just folded in right before the Italians started to get folded into the mix. So I get what he's saying, but it's quite obvious that that's not as much of a distinction anymore. And yeah, he's just probably being cheeky, but still, it's a little bit obnoxious because you're talking with alt-righters, identity, white European types. You should know that.
I mean, we all make fun of the Irish and the alt-right, but I mean, he's still like my brother. Like, I still have in Identity Europa. Like, I still have Irish females who are in there. Those are my sisters. Like, I still embrace the white race as a whole.
Genetically, what differentiates the Jews from the whites?
The fact that they're Semitic.
Yeah.
Okay, Semitic's just a word. What genetically? I said genetics.
That's
no, I said genetics, not ethnicity or these political terms you're throwing out. Genetics
ethnicity is not a political term. It's just like that's
what's
what
genetics
is based off of.
Hubris? What's your name again?
Yeah, hubris.
Hubris. Okay, hubris. You said genetics, and genetics has like scientific terminology, right?
Yeah. So like, there's Celts, there's Anglos, there's the Semitics, there's the Aryans. What do
you see, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So I know it took a little bit while to get here. He's anxious and easily agitated, and it's like, whoa, but like, and just is kind of like, well, hold on, like, I'm just trying to, like, you don't know what you're talking about. Why don't you just relax? And it's funny, like, they just kind of like, especially like, I guess hubris, just kind of like, it's like, well, whatever, man. There was a little bit more sticky points where he got a little bit like, what kind of like this kind of basically like, what the hell, dude? Like, what is your problem? It's a political term, like. So I guess maybe now in varying degrees it's not as obnoxious as it was to me previously watching this, but we'll just kind of take that. So let's get to the last little drop, and then from there I'm just going to kind of round up my thoughts and join you again.
White people and Jews. You understand now with the way genetics works and the way people are mixed and everything. It's not really a winning strategy. It's not, you're going to have some Jews that identify as white people because they had a white heritage and all this. Not everybody's going to get on board. Not everybody's going to get on board.
It doesn't matter if everyone does. We don't need everyone. We need enough.
I mean, you need a fair. I was about to say, because what we want to do is we want to overthrow. We basically want to get rid of this trash legacy media, first off, because they're going to be the ones that are going to continually push propaganda that's going to demonize your cause, and they're constantly going to damage your cause. You've got to get them out the way first.
They haven't damaged us at all. Every time they talk about us, it's free publicity.
I mean, we get.
Okay, because that was the last point. First, when he says, well, there's going to be Jews who are identified as white, and, and then he says, like, regular legacy media is going to kind of keep disparaging you. The first part, excuse me, sorry. It's interesting now a year later when it's kind of like, well, to a certain degree, the alt-right as a collective should have taken the Jewish question a little bit differently. Because again, like just like in this video with them kind of sitting around giggling and hanging out, it became more about just having fun and, ooh, it's edgy, talk about the Jews and the echoes and all the fun memes. I mean, there are some definitely fun, dank maymays out there that, I thought was cool and had fun participating in. And it was all fine and dandy and good. So, but looking now, a year in, after everyone is kind of red pilled on that discussion, it's like, again, like I mentioned Luke Ford previously, LukeFord.net is his blog. He has a channel here on YouTube. He goes live pretty much every day. And he's an Australian who was born and raised Seventh-day Adventist who converted to Orthodox Judaism within the past decade, I want to say. Yeah, he's been like an Orthodox Jew for like maybe the past decade. And maybe it's a little bit less than a decade. I think it's a little less than a decade, but anywho, that and now the discussion that he's kind of steering, and he has some cool people on. Like there's this one guy, was it Hyperbian? Oh gosh, can't remember his name, but he's his handle, but he's pretty cool. He had some other Jews, like some ethnic Jews, come on and talk, and they've had discussions and just kind of like really taking a step back from the Jewish question to kind of like talk about things that work with it, things that are faulty, things that deserve a lot more like unpacking, or you have to just kind of contextualize in the sense that yes, they're an out group, they're their own group that supports their own in group, but some of the things that their relationship to others is different. Um, Basically, Flex hit something that ended up becoming eerily like, oh, what he was saying there actually ends up playing into something that should have been discussed a little bit more and should have been taken more to heed. Is a lot more people. It just became really fun and cheeky to, you know, talk crap about them Jews and pass around dank memes, and it just kind of have fun and get everybody red pilled. This kind of like sort of shock and awe in a sense of people and who of. I'm stepping on my words here. Sorry. Um, so I think that's all I want to say about that point. I really beat that last one like a dead horse. So I'll be honest, like I maybe should. I mean, I wanted to show more than less, but I could have probably maybe done this one. I might leave this one up for a minute, and I might take this one down and maybe just come back and retweak this. Maybe make it a little tighter, a little shorter. Maybe just pick like 2 or 3 of those points out that I really like. But again, I'll probably end up leaving it up. Who knows? Because I do want to come back and do the red ice. So maybe I'll just learn from this one. It's also hard when you have like 3 or 4 people talking too, and they all are saying things you want to share. But okay, I don't use that to make an excuse. Sorry, I'm making an excuse, guys. So the part 2, I think I might just do in 2 parts. Do the red ice one. No, because there's the Hotep Nation article. So I'll be back to finish this off because, like I said, this is something I wanted to cover for a bit. I probably saw the interview like 6 months ago, maybe a little bit less, a little bit longer, when this little Hotep alt-right alignment was coming out. Oh, sorry, excuse me, it's another yawn. So that's telling me it's time for me to get down with the sleep business. It's been a long day. So it's Friday. Oh, it's technically Saturday morning now. Whoop. So getting up on that Easter. So I should be back before then because Sunday's a pretty full day. So I'm gonna try to make a couple of bits tomorrow. I think what's on deck is, well, I guess you have part 2, 3 of this. So thanks for sticking with me, and I will catch you again tomorrow, which is technically later today. So toodles, have a good night. Thanks for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow or later today.